Um, okay, we are recording the meeting, so that we can, for people who can't participate today, we'll be able to watch this on YouTube and so on if they'd like to. So, hello, I thank you all for joining me. I'm Sandy Galef and a member of the New York State Assembly, and I'm very excited to have the Senior Forum today. In the past, we've had the opportunity pretty much to be in the town of Cortland, big hall with wonderful speakers, and I know we tried to protect everybody by having this town hall meeting for seniors on Zoom. And we're really excited to be here. And I'm sure it's going to be as lively a discussion as it has been in past senior forums that I've had. And of course, seniors do have specific issues and challenges. And we're here today to learn and advocate for ourselves about the programs that are available to us and ways that we can be helpful to ourselves, but also to our neighbors and our friends and other people in our families. So today we're going to hear from our 6 panelists, Pete Granis, and Beth Finkel, Leslie Bailey, David Kuttner, Roberta Goodman, and Gary Brown. And each are going to have about 15 minutes to speak, and there will be 2 question and answer periods. The first question and answer will be after our first speaker, Pete Granis, and then the second will be an extended discussion after our last speaker, Gary Brown. And I'd also like to start out by recognizing the co-sponsors of this virtual senior forum, who have done such a great work with seniors in the communities and also helped to get the word out about today. And so I applaud North Court, Cortland, Verplank, and Crompound Senior Clubs, the Briarcliff Manor Seniors, the Croton Senior Club, Westchester County Department of Senior Programs and Services, and the Putnam County Office for Senior Services. And I know that there are always others. This has been a hard year to contact people in senior programs, and for senior programs to be open, it hasn't been so easy. So, but I appreciate all your help. And I'd like to also extend my thanks to my staff, Jen Tewil, who runs my office in Osnane, and to Claire Wexted, who put together this program for us today, and she's waving, and Andrew Liebert, who is behind the scenes with the technology, and he's our Zoom expert. So hopefully all will go well. Now I'd like to introduce our first guest, Pete Granis, and I've known Pete for a very long time. He is the first deputy of the State Comptroller Thomas DiNapoli's office. So he's the deputy comptroller. Oh, good. It says Pete Granis. Good. Okay. On your site. I'm sometimes Andrew Liebert, so on mine. Anyway, Pete was appointed to the role in 2011, and he administers the New York State Retirement Fund, maintains the state's accounting system, and administers the state payroll. He has a few people working with him. He manages and issues state debt, audits state agencies and public benefit corporations, and acts as a custodian of our 17 billion abandoned property, unclaimed funds, which we are going to talk about today. And I just like to say that Pete has been a good friend of mine. I first met him when I entered the Assembly in 1993, and Pete was already there in the New York State Assembly as a member. And he was one of those people that I admired so much, followed so much. I was on so many of his bills. He had great legislation. And then he went off to be the New York State Environmental Commissioner. So we had a lot of contact during that period of time, and just a pleasure to have my friend on today. So I'm going to turn it over to Pete. I think, yes, okay. If everybody can kind of go on mute at this point, that would be very helpful, except for the speaker. Okay, welcome, Pete Granis.
Good morning, Sandy, and good morning to everybody, and thank you for the introduction. Just to be clear, the introduction is what the office does, and I help out the controller in overseeing all of those activities. Obviously, we depend on our amazing staff to do all the work. And my job is to keep track of everything, make sure it runs smoothly, and to make sure the controller is happy with how the office is running. So thank you for the introduction. And good morning again to everybody. This is a rare opportunity for me to talk about some of the things that I think are the most interesting about our office. We obviously are the state's fiscal agent. We pay all the bills. We approve all the contracts. We issue all the paychecks for the state employees. We manage the state pension fund, which I'll talk about in a minute. And we monitor and audit all the state agencies and local governments, and school districts. It's a huge task. We've got an amazing team here of people that carry out those responsibilities and have been working, as many of you have, from home for the last year and a half, have been doing a great job. And I think many of them would prefer to stay home. But our plan is to bring back the workforce as we are finding that more and more people are vaccinated, and these changes that are going on are letting us bring people back at least part-time and hopefully full-time in the near future. Sandy mentioned the unclaimed funds part, which is one of the most interesting and high-profile aspects. $17 billion. The state keeps track of $17 billion of money that people have left behind in bank accounts and not cashing checks and not claiming stock benefits and other kinds of things like that. It's the money is here. It's not our money. We're holding it on behalf of the millions of people who have left these funds behind. We return over $1 million a day, most of it through our internet site. But so almost $400 million got returned last year. The rest is sitting here waiting for people to check. And I would urge anybody that might be interested. It's an interesting exercise anyway, because you can do it for New York State and other states. Just to go online and look at unclaimed funds and put your name in and see whether or not anybody's holding any money for you. It's free. There's no charge whatsoever. There are businesses out there that try to facilitate returns of unclaimed funds and charge a fee for it. But our service, and I think every other state that has unclaimed funds, gives money back directly and for free. So if that's of any interest to people, I would urge you to do that. The other high profile aspect of our office is our state pension fund. We are the pension fund for over 1 million people in the state workers and the employees of local governments and fire departments and police departments across the state outside the city of New York. 600,000 active members, 400,000 retirees. And our pension fund is one of the best funded in the country. It's now the latest tabulation. It's the third largest public pension fund in the country. It's $268 billion, a staggering sum. But we, unlike almost every other big public pension fund, are fully funded. It is extraordinarily well managed. It's the people that do the investment work on behalf of the controller have been doing a remarkable job in making sure that the resources that are needed to make sure that people's pensions are available and will be available for all time are well managed. So with that, I just want to very quickly talk about a couple of other things. In addition to paying all the bills, we keep track of all the money that comes into the state. And as everybody can imagine, it has been extraordinarily difficult time for people across the state, but there's been a historic amount of federal money that has flown into the state for a variety of programs. And we have a tracker that keeps track of all this, which the controller announced very recently. So for the 6 or 8 programs that are both federally funded and state funded, they total roughly $25 billion. There's been a lot of concern about how that money is going out the door, when it's going out, and timing. So our federal tracker is on our website. It's not just the federal tracker, it's state funds too, but it's on our website. And I would urge anybody that has interest in seeing what the programs do. There are details on each of the 7 or 8 programs that we administer and we cut the checks for. But on behalf of the agencies, the functioning agencies that make the decisions on who gets the money. So of the $25 billion, as of the end of October, over $9 billion had been spent. leaving an awful lot of money available for renter relief, homeowner relief, forgotten workers that aren't eligible for unemployment insurance, emergency rent assistance. There's a host of programs. So with that, I guess I can talk about some of the other things we do. We do some very interesting audits. We audit, as I said, all the agencies. We also write reports on things of interest to New Yorkers. So one of our most recent reports is the extent of broadband internet service availability across the state. Amazing at this time that we are so dependent, as Sandy said in the beginning, on the internet. We've all learned to live with Zoom and all these other things that now were sort of sideline issues before the pandemic hit and now are the norm. But over 1 million people in New York don't have access to internet, or don't have access to the kind of internet that is necessary for being able to study at home and do normal work and keep track of medical records and things at home. So our role in all of this was to define where the state is, what's needed. And our report that we put out on broadband access received a great deal of attention. And it obviously was read carefully by the new governor and her staff. And I think in this coming budget, both the state and the federal government will be committing a great deal more money for expanding internet access, quality internet access to people that need it and that have not been able to get access to this vital service for the past year and a half, when it was so needed. We've done other reports on adult protective services, the agencies that look after adult protected services. There's a whole host of protections and agencies that are involved in this. Some of them are doing their job. Obviously, these have been very stressful times, not only for the citizens of New York, but for the men and women that are doing the work in these agencies to try to make sure that people are being protected. So we're very mindful of that. The pressures have been severe on the state workforce. At the same time, there is a pressing need for the kind of services that have been available in the past. So with that, we put out a report on adult protective services, somewhat critical of the agencies, but somewhat very mindful of the pressures that they've been subjected to during the pandemic, and their own staffs. I mean, their own staffs are obviously working from home as well as our staff. So keeping track of all this has been a problem and been an issue. That's pretty much it. This agency is, Controller's Office is one of these agencies that if we don't do our job, everybody knows about it. And if we do our job, hopefully nobody hears from us, because the kind of work we do for the most part is behind the scenes, critically important, very well done by the men and women that are here. I have been very impressed in my decade working for Tom DiNapoli, the controller, where Sandy and I served with him in the assembly, where he was a great assembly member as well. But the fact is that this office has done, I think, remarkably. And the men and women that work here are, I think, of the highest quality. And one of the things that just impressed me with the new governor when she was sworn in was a recognition of the importance of the state workforce. It was not a high priority of the former governor to shout out to the state workers about how much their work is appreciated and needed and respected. And I think Governor Hochul did a very good job in her very first public statements, is recognizing the importance of the state workforce. And for the two agencies I work for, the Department of Environmental Conservation and now the Controller's Office, it is just a reminder of the commitment of thousands of men and women who have made their life with their professional commitments to public service, at least in these agencies, and I think across the board, how hard the work has been and how much they've done and how well they've done it. So Sandy, that's pretty much an overview of what we are able to do. There's listings of all of our reports. We keep track of the cash that the state has on hand. We put out these reports that are picked up by financial reporting services, and anybody who's interested in any of these things, they can find them on our website. And if they have difficulty finding them, please just let me know or let Sandy know, and we will happily respond to any questions and provide information on any of the programs that we oversee and work on and the things that we do.
Thank you so much, Pete, for that overview. And I just like to say, Matthew Martini is putting up all kinds of little notes for us on all the different reports. and Matt is the regional coordinator for the controller's office in our area. And I'm sure he would have been at if we didn't have a virtual Zoom, he would have been at our meeting. So he has put up information, which is great. And I just want to tell you, Pete, I didn't know that I had a stock. It's worth $40. And they sent me a letter recently saying, if you don't do something, it's going to go to the controller. And I quickly signed the piece of paper. And I don't even think I get $40 back, but I probably get 35 or whatever else. So I'm hoping to keep things out of your unclaimed funds category.
We don't mind having it.
On this one, you're not going to make much money, but I guess you do make. I mean, you get interest, do you not?
No, we don't. There's nothing in this for us other than being the intermediary and holding these funds. We actually pay interest on any money that would have earned interest for the first 5 years that we hold it. 100%, 70% of all the claims we get are under $100, so they're very small. But I can't remember the number. We have 44 million accounts. So
my goodness, we've had some. Dana Levenberg is on the line as town supervisor of Ossining, and I don't know, Dana, whether you were here in the office when somebody in Ossining. There were two people, a dentist.
Yes.
And were you there, Dana?
Yes.
We were like so surprised.
Yes,
they got
we found
so much money back.
A lot of money. Yes, we did, and we were very excited to help them find that money and give it back to them. They needed it. They just didn't realize how much.
We're holding money on behalf of communities too. I mean, not for profits,
Yes.
small companies, small businesses, and of public entities, towns, villages, and every once in a while, the controller will go out and, with these great big presentation checks that get a lot of attention in the media, but it is a reminder that it's free to look and it's worthwhile checking. And every once in a while, there's a surprise.
Just for any of my Ossining constituents, I have looked. That was probably the first thing I did when I was sworn in 2016. We didn't have anything that was more than like $11, I don't think.
No, I know.
So you need to look, though, not just for your name.
Yes.
And your name in maybe different ways, however, like Sandy Galef, Sandra Galef, or whatever, but also relatives. It's a way to check out everybody in your family and try to see if you can give them a little present.
And not just in New York. I mean, every state has an unclaimed funds program. And a lot of the websites let you search on multiple states at a single search, so that you don't have to log into each state program to see whether there's any funds available. And it is. These are bank accounts that were left behind that haven't been, not even left behind. If you haven't touched your bank account for 3 years, that triggers the first, I guess, notice that Sandy got that, money is being held of yours. And if you don't, to let us know, we're going to send it to the state controller's office, where I can almost universally guarantee that it will be held safe and sound until you get around to asking for it.
Well, maybe Matt can see if there's any other big checks out there waiting to get into the hands of any of your constituents, Sandy.
All right, I'm going to ask if anybody has questions. Maybe Dana does too, but if anybody has questions, just put up your hand or raise your hand, and maybe I need to do the gallery view. So if anybody has any questions for Pete, I wanted to know a little bit, Pete, about the sales tax. I'm thinking about our budget in the future, which is an implication for how much local governments are going to be getting, organizations, schools, et cetera, as we do the budget. And my understanding is sales tax is really, even this year, we're doing really well with sales tax, aren't we, at the present time?
Sales tax, we track monthly sales tax collections, and sales taxes are running ahead of pre-pandemic numbers. Now, why that may be, whether or not people are spending some of the money that they've gotten from unemployment insurance. Let me just give you one other number, which is as staggering as some of the other numbers we deal with. During the pandemic, the 18 months of the pandemic, the state has dispersed over $100 billion in unemployment insurance benefits. that's both federal and state money. And that is like 10 times more than we would have normally put out. But that's money that, for the most part, is going back, and the people are using it now and have been using it for buying things and spending it. And that it's part of what's driven the sales tax collections up until now. But they're way ahead of the projections in the state budget, and way ahead of what I think most local governments had anticipated. And that's a very good sign. The economy is recovering, maybe not fast enough, but it is recovering, and it will make a big difference for local governments to have the resources needed to provide the services they do.
Right, that's great. Are there any questions? Anybody? I'll ask another question if I can. Oh, Claire, you want to unmute yourself?
Hello?
No, not Claire Wexted. Claire McGarry.
Unmute. Okay,
There
now?
you are. Yep.
Okay, long time since I've been on the Zoom. On the unclaimed funds, when you go into the state webpage for it, you have to put in your social security number, which always scares me. I never want to put that on the computer.
You know, I've obviously checked a few times. I don't recall putting my social security number. I just put my name. It tracks my name and address sometimes, but
Okay,
or you'll get everybody that has a name that's similar to yours, you know, it comes up. There's no requirement that I recall for social security numbers, because I wouldn't put mine in either. So again,
Okay, thank you.
we don't, all we get is the money from your, you know, hypothetically, if you haven't touched your bank account for 4 or 5 years, they'll just transmit the money to us without any identifying information other than the name. And the filing, you may have to do something if you're actually asking for the return
Yeah,
of
I can
something.
understand that.
But in the search, no social security numbers are needed.
Okay, Sandy, I have one other thing. Martin, the little blurbs they're putting up, Matthew Martini.
Yes.
I can't copy all that down so fast. Can I get that later?
Yes, you know what, we're gonna have Matt, what we can do, Claire, I guess you got our Zoom, right? That's why you're on it by
Yes.
Zoom. You got our, okay, so Claire Wexted will send out, probably tomorrow, we'll try to send out all the information about where to get the reports that Matt's
good.
talking about. So he'll compile them and we'll get them out to you.
I appreciate it, but I can't
Right,
listen.
yes,
and
there's
write.
too much. I agree, I agree.
Thank you.
It's hard to keep up with all this. So do we have any other questions? I have a question, Pete, about if you in your community, I know you do a lot of reports to kind of go after abuses in the system, you know, whether it's not real abuses, but you know, a government doesn't have transparency with something, or a fire department is not spending their money the way they should, or whatever. If people do have a concern, because people call my office with a concern about how public monies are being spent, or pension or whatever else, how does the public reach out and try to get, I mean, you don't have a huge staff. I mean, you have a big staff, but you don't have a big enough staff probably to go after all of these issues. But how do people start that process if they want you to look into something?
Well, there are 3 or 4 ways, Sandy. They could ask you to ask us.
Right, okay.
Number one, they could ask Matt, who you know, is the regional rep for the controller. They could write us a letter, send us an email. A lot of the things that we look at, particularly the audits where we're dealing with issues of, you know, where things are going wrong, or there might be some concern about how whether money's being properly spent, are triggered by individuals writing us a note or contacting us about, you know, their suspicions about misdeeds. So we're prepared to look at all those things, and clearly, you know, we do our best to respond individually to people, but you know, we can't do individual searches for things, but we really can use the information that we get from the public. I mean, their eyes and ears of, you know, nearly 20 million people are out there. And we would hope that they would speak up if they think something is not going well, or money is being misspent. Or they think something really serious is happening. We work closely with the district attorneys and with the U.S. attorney's offices on criminal matters. And, there's a host of, there's not as many of those. Most of what we do is not these kinds of audits that get headlines. It's when you're talking about transparency or not having the right signatures on checks, or money's being held, too much money is being held in reserve accounts and things like that, or really sort of our engagement with local governments. We do an awful lot of training. We have a lot of websites and in-person trainings that used to be, with local governments at a host of on a host of issues. It's really, we are consider ourselves partners with local governments and making sure governments have the tools they need to make decisions and are doing them in the best state-of-the-art way. And that's part of what we do. That gets so little attention, but it's important and it's ongoing because local officials turn over, they change. And so we keep up, trying to make sure that everybody knows as much as possible about what's needed to run a efficient local government. And we're very good at that. I think our team that goes out and does these Zoom meetings and town meetings and meetings with trade associations is top notch. But if people let us know, I think that is I guess the bottom line is not, I think people need to speak up. Again, we can't be everywhere. Things that, we do audits. We audit over time every single school district, as I mentioned before, and all local governments. The latest concern is cybersecurity. A real concern, I think, for your constituents and, me and everybody else, and both our agency here and local governments is being as well prepared as possible on cybersecurity. These hacks that are taking, place around the world, around the country, around the state, are very worrisome. We get people try to get into our system 500,000 times a day. Now, those are just, random exercises where people just cast about, but every once in a while, they will find a flaw. And so part of our audit process is to help local governments, either be aware of shortcomings in their own cybersecurity defenses, or to move up a notch and, so that we are better prepared to deal with these kinds of attacks, which I think are going to come out more and more over the next few years.
Right. So you have those attacks that way. And a lot of us get attacks personally. And we have Gary Brown on later on to talk about, how to prevent the scams that we all get. And I know so often I look at these emails that come in, and I say, is this a real one or not? It's like,
I tell everybody that I'm a millionaire because my friend in Nigeria, the prince in Nigeria, is holding that money for me. All he needs is a little information and he'll be getting it to me right away. I mean, these scams are out there, and even, it is interesting. We do tests internally to make sure people are aware of even our own internal risks. And as often as we tell everybody to check their emails and look at, things that look that they're not look fishy and look phony, we still get people that open things that, on hindsight, were clearly not meant to be opened. They were scams, and we're protected against that to some degree, but it's not perfect. And so we've been very lucky and fortunate with our cybersecurity network that we are, have not had any difficulties. But it is a constant need to be aware, and particularly for, not just, I would point this out for older people. I mean, obviously there's people sitting at home, are vulnerable to these kinds of scams. Of deputy here's mother gets 3 calls a week, either they've got her grandchild or just we need some help. But all these scams that are prepared to separate you from your money. It's
right. Well, I think Claire was so right, McGarry, about just not giving your social security number. I mean, really watch that one.
And, any other personal information. It's hard not to do because you're ordering stuff on the internet all the time. But just be aware. And not just you, but if you're watching, if you have relatives that might be more vulnerable, is to be very aware and check regularly on whether or not, things are going on that shouldn't be going on. It's just, it's hard to do. I know that's intrusive sometimes with relatives, but sometimes very necessary. And these things are found that, often weeks or months after the fact, that money has been stolen from people by these various scams. So it's not just individually, but to watch out for friends and relatives and be aware and be prepared to help out and step in if something is going on.
Right. Well, I want to thank you so much, Pete, for joining us today and giving us some more oversight of what the Comptroller's Office is doing up in the state of New York. And I appreciate you being here. And you're such a dear friend. It's nice to see you.
On behalf of the controller and certainly for me, it's been a pleasure. So thank you very much, Sandy, for this opportunity. And again, the very best to all of your constituents and best for the holidays now that we have passed the good holiday and are headed to the expensive ones.
Right. Thanks so much, Pete.
Okay, bye.
Okay, now we're going to turn to Beth Finkel, who is the state director of AARP New York. And during her tenure as the state director, AARP's lobbying efforts have led to reforms, including the passage of the Secure Choice Savings Program, which we'd like to talk more about, which probably will be under the jurisdiction of the Comptroller's Office at some point, maybe. The CARE Act, the assisted living protections, the anti-predatory lending, paid family leave, and affordable housing and more. That you've been involved in so many important issues. So I'm going to ask you if you can do an update. And I just have to say that for those on the Zoom, I've had the good fortune of being in Albany, not the last year and a half, but and having the AARP lobbyists all over the place working on various issues. And they're identifiable because they always have their T-shirts on that talk about the issue that they are up there lobbying about. So it's very easy to spot them. And they've just been a wonderful asset, I think, to getting things moving in the New York State Assembly. So Beth?
Thank you, Sandy. Special shout out to you because you have been an incredible champion for the 50 plus in New York State for so many years. And there are countless numbers of bills and policies that you have supported and helped push through. So I hope everybody on this call, I'm sure that they do know they're your constituents, and I'm sure they know how hard you have fought for older adults in New York. And quick shout out to you, Pete. I don't know if you know this, but you were my assembly member. I was on Community Board 8 for many years, thanks to you and your colleagues, and always respected your work too. And Tony Morenzi was a good friend of mine for a long time. So shout out to you too, Pete, and so glad you're doing the great job you're doing in the Comptroller's Office. So AARP, so I'm the state director. I'm hoping everybody on this call knows AARP. We have 38 million members nationally, and here in New York State, we have 2.5 million members. And I'm emphasizing that number because in those numbers, that is what the power of AARP is all about. It's because of people like you who join AARP and then make sure that your voices are heard on the issues that are most important to you. And so AARP is doing this work all year round at the federal, at the state level, and in some localities. So I just want to make sure to say that to you. Because of those numbers of members, we are able to push through a lot of legislation. And Sandy just talked about some of the work that we've done recently, but I'm going to, if you don't mind, Sandy, I'm going to look to the future and what we're hoping to get done this year, but I'll certainly back up on anything anybody has questions about. So in terms of our state policies, they very much reflect some of our federal policies. And the number one policy for us federally right now is around RX affordability. Americans pay 3 times the amount of any other country in terms of paying for prescription drugs. It's shocking. 3 times the amount that any other country pays. It's outrageous. So AARP worked with Congress, we worked with the House to get the Build Back Better bill passed. Now we got to get it done in the Senate. It's not going to be easy, which is a good reason why we've got 53 AARP state offices across the country. And just what I do in Albany and what I do in terms of advocating on the federal level, got teams of people in every other state doing this and leading literally brigades of volunteers who make their voices heard. So there are things that we can also do at the state level, and that's what I want to focus on today. And I know Sandy is well aware of these policies because she's helped work on them. It's just crazy that these drug prices keep going up. And it's just wrong that in the midst of the pandemic and financial crisis, drug companies have increased the prices of over 1,000 drugs just in the last year. 1,000 drugs. And it's gone, and the increases have been far and away above the rate of inflation. And you're going to hear very often pharma and the big drug companies are going to say, oh, but we need the money for research and development. We have to have that money. Well, that might be, but they seem to find $6.6 billion every year to pay for that advertising on TV. I don't know about the rest of you, but most of those drugs they're advertising, relate back to a small core of people. And I'd rather get my information from my doctor or my pharmacist on what drugs I need to take or not take, and not get it pushed down my throat about things that may or may not be relevant for me at all. $6.6 billion they can find for advertising. And by the way, they also spend over $1 billion on lobbyists in Washington. So they're making choices about how they're spending their money. We, as American taxpayers, have to help our legislators understand about how we want our money spent. So right now, on the federal level, believe it or not, Medicare is not allowed to negotiate for drug prices. The Veterans Administration can negotiate for drug prices. Why wouldn't we allow Medicare to negotiate for drug prices? And the reason is because of the powerful lobbyists that walk the halls of Congress and make their thoughts known in many different ways with legislators. But I'm going to go back to ARP. ARP makes our voice heard. We don't give money. We don't get involved with politics. We get involved with the issues, and our members voice how they feel about these issues. And over 85% of our members, Democrat, Republican, Independent, all want Medicare to be able to negotiate drug prices. So I'm going to give you some information at the end of this about how you can have your voice heard there too. But let me talk about New York State. We can look at the Medicare Savings Program, and for those of you who don't know about the Medicare Savings Program, it's for people who are lower income Medicare eligible. And if that might be you might want to check in with Medicare Rights Center or others to find out if you are eligible for some extra help to pay for your Medicare bills. But on top of that, there's a way that we might be able to expand access to this Medicare Savings Program that would allow extra help to help pay for drugs also. So that's one of the things ARP is going to be working on this year up in Albany. We also are working to ban pay for delay deals. This is the one that makes me really scratch my head, folks. So big drug companies pay companies who produce generic drugs of the same quality, exactly the same thing. They pay these generic drug companies to hold the products back from going on the market. And why would they do that? So that we all have to pay for the brand name product and pay so much more for it. It's just inexcusable. So there is a way that state government can, and I see Sandy shaking her head, so I know she's well aware of this. There's a way that state government, there's a bill out there that would ban pay for delay deals in New York. And the third way is importation. Many of you might have thought about importing your drugs from Canada, and there's plenty of people who do it. It's not legal, but there is a way that we can make it legal here in New York State. So that would be the third way that we could help make drugs more affordable in New York. And then I really want to spend a little time focusing on family caregivers and home and community-based services, because I know that many of you who are involved in senior services in your counties and also in senior centers in your counties and in senior clubs in your counties, you're probably all very much aware of the wonderful programs that the area agencies on aging provide for home and community-based services. That might be Meals on Wheels, it might be transportation services, it might be friendly visiting, it might be chore services. it might be transportation to the doctor. There's just a myriad of services that are out there. However, in many counties, there are waiting lists, and we find that inexcusable. So we have been working very, very hard to beat back those waiting lists every year. Last year, and thank you, Sandy, there was extra money in the budget that went in, but we need more, because it's no surprise to everybody that during COVID times, we have found out that people need more and more. In fact, this is a really shocking data point for you all that you might not be aware of, but the number of people who have fallen into that area of need for around hunger area, it's doubled in New York State. That's pretty shocking, isn't it? So we've got to make sure that we can meet that need. We don't want anyone to have to do without a meal. And for those of you who are in senior services in Putnam and in Westchester, I know you know very well how essential that services are, the meal delivery, and other ways that we try to connect people to SNAP and food stamps, which is something else that AARP works really hard on. We also are trying to get a caregiver tax credit. We know that the average person who does caregiving for a family member, and that might be chore services, but it might be that they're living with them, or that they're keeping them in their own home and then building ramps or something else to help their loved ones stay at home. We know that they are paying up to an average of $7,200 out of their own pocket every year to help a loved one stay at home. And we applaud that effort. And we are so thankful for that, because if they didn't do that, loving care, a lot more people would end up in institutional care, which is not where anybody wants to age. If you have to, because you need those services, we got to make sure nursing homes are safe places. But people want to stay in their own homes, and we want to be able to respect their dignity and allow them to do that, facilitate them being able to do that. And that's what these loved ones do, to the tune of over $32 billion a year in New York State that would have had to been paid out of pocket from somebody, and they deliver all that money for free, the services that equal all that money. So we're proposing this caregiver tax credit, which I also know Sandy knows all about. And we're hoping that this is the year we get it through. And then I mentioned nursing homes. And you know, this year, the last 2 years have been, for all of us who have loved ones in long-term care facilities, we know just how trying it has been. A lot of inroads have been made around visitation and other ways that we've done oversight with nursing homes, and we're thankful for that. But one of the major areas that we can be looking at, and again, back to the AAAs in Westchester and in Putnam, because I know you've done a lot of work in this area, we have long-term care ombudsman programs, and they are staffed by volunteers. In fact, many of you on the call today might be volunteers for your local long-term care ombudsman programs, and we can't thank you enough. However, as you all know, during COVID, the volunteers could not go in there. They could not provide that vital extra pair of eyes to make sure that people were being fed, that they were being clothed properly, that they were not having bed sores, that they weren't left isolated and tied up in chairs all day. I mean, those are the things that just break your heart. And if your loved ones can't come in and see if things are going to be okay, we count on those long-term care ombudsmen to be able to do that. So we got a small increase in the budget for it last year. We need a bigger increase this year, because there's just no way they have enough money. And we have learned that we cannot just depend on volunteers. We want the volunteers. We want that program to flourish. And we know in safe times, it works great. However, we need more paid professionals in there who can go in no matter what the situation is. If, God forbid, the pandemic comes roaring back or something else happens down the pike, we need to have a stronger program in there. We're also looking at labor issues around long-term care programs, because we know that's also an issue. There's shortages in so many counties of caregivers and of paid caregivers, and we need to rectify that. And then I want to talk a little bit about livable communities. That's around transportation and housing. And in this year, we're particularly looking at ADUs, which are accessory dwelling units. We used to call them the granny apartments. Many of you might remember that, right? You'd convert a garage or some other or a basement or something to facilitate being able to have a loved one with you. Well, the laws in New York State really have not looked at regulating that to make sure that people are going to be safe. And um, I, I don't I don't know if you're aware, but in New York City during that last Ida terrible flood that we had, 11 people lost their lives in Queens, and they were in these accessory dwelling units that were not licensed or regulated. And had they been, they would not have lost their lives. So we really want to see that bill move forward. And we also continually want to look at accessibility because, again, back to those points of keeping people in their homes as long as they and their loved ones want them to remain in their homes. And finally, I'm going to get to utilities because this is one of the ones that makes my blood boil, right? Because we can't stand seeing those increases year after year after year. And we really need more oversight in that area. AARP spends a great deal of time, and we hire some really great public interest lawyers to get out there and fight and get the facts about why the utility companies continually need more increases. So that's one area that we're working in. On top of that, we're looking at high-speed internet. And I know that it's spotty across a lot of the lower Hudson Valley. We've looked at a lot of research on that. New York State is increasing what they're doing in terms of mapping, but it's really not enough. So I want to let you know we've got our eye on that because without that, as many of you know, you can't get telehealth. You can't work, doing a work environment, and your children and grandchildren really can't excel at school if they don't have access to the internet anymore. So it is as basic as getting water and electricity into your house. Internet is exactly the same thing. It is a basic need now. So I want to let you know we're doing that. And finally, we're looking at arrears. And I know that, Sandy, you've looked at this too, that a lot of people, because of the pandemic, have gotten behind on their utility costs. And how do we make sure that those people are protected? We don't want anybody to have their basic utilities shut off, especially in these times. I talked a lot. And there's a lot more I could talk about. I didn't talk about Social Security. I didn't talk about Medicare. And I just want to assure you that if you're a member of AARP, and even if you're not, you couldn't get a better ROI on your membership dollar than with AARP because we are out there fighting every day and nobody is fighting as hard as we are on these issues. So just want to put that plug in. And finally, I think I had I had sent along some PowerPoint, Sandy. I'm trying to remember which member of your staff. And on that, the last page of the PowerPoint has how people can join our efforts. And I'm just wondering if it's possible to get that up on the screen so that people can write down how they can get more involved. Or maybe you can send that out.
We may have to, Claire, do you have that or we'll send it out afterwards?
It was probably sent to Jen. I can send it out afterwards to everyone.
That would be terrific. So I'll just say to you guys, we have hundreds of thousands in New York State alone of online activists. So you can get our action alerts. Sandy has been the recipient of action alerts. And so we send them out periodically about federal and state issues. So if you want to get involved with the issues that we're doing, or just like on a particular issue, just make sure that your voice is heard. I really recommend becoming an online activist. And then finally, I'm going to just put one more pitch in to volunteer with AARP. We have a very strong volunteer cadre across the state. Sometimes we go up to Albany and march down the halls, as Sandy said, but we also do a lot of fun events, and we also do a lot of informative information events. I know you got Gary Brown on later. We've done a lot of scams and fraud events with the AG's office and plenty of others. So we'll get that information to you also, and I hope to get to know you each personally if you'd like to volunteer with us. So thank you. Thank you.
Beth, you really covered it so well. And Adele Stern had asked about contacts for you. So you might want to put that in the chat, but we will get out on the Zoom, your final page as to how to be involved.
Absolutely.
And I would hope everybody keep your questions. We're going to keep them to the end because we've got a few more speakers. So let's turn now to Leslie Bailey. And
hi, good morning.
good morning, Leslie. Leslie is the Director of Training at the Benefits Plus Learning Center, and she'll tell us about that. She's been specializing in public benefit programs for over 20 years with a focus on cash and food programs. And she provides training, consultation services to nonprofit professionals across New York State. And she's going to talk about the benefits. I was on a panel with her in Phillipstown, and I found it so interesting. So we asked her to come and be on this panel. So welcome,
Thank you
Leslie.
so much. Thank you so much, Assembly Member, Woman Galef. I really love the opportunity to talk about food programs. If I could share my screen, I think I have the ability to do that. As a teacher, I'm always hand in hand with my PowerPoint slides. So I am from the Community Service Society of New York. It's a small program called the Benefits Plus Learning Center. And what we do is we provide information, publications, and training to social service professionals in New York State, going around teaching individual case managers, interns, social workers about public benefit programs. And so I put together a small presentation for non-social service professionals, just teaching a little bit about how these programs work. There's a lot of myths and misconceptions about how they work, who is eligible, and hopefully I'll give people a sense of what is out there and what might be available. I have my PowerPoint here, and I also made that available, so hopefully that'll be up as a handout as well. So the first thing I want to talk about is SNAP benefits. I put a picture of the EBT card, electronic benefit transfer card that you get when you are eligible for SNAP benefits. SNAP benefits typically is to purchase unprepared food at participating supermarkets, farmers markets, and most recently online in the past few years, actually before COVID. The USDA started a pilot project with Aldi, Amazon, Price Chopper, supermarkets, Walmart, and ShopRite to be able to utilize SNAP benefits online. You cannot purchase vitamins or medicine with SNAP benefits, just unprepared food items. But recently, the USDA, we're waiting for approval. The state has put in a request so that SNAP recipients, specifically individuals who are homeless, disabled, and older adults age 60 and over, Governor Hochul wants to be able to have this population purchase hot food with SNAP benefits. This is very new. She's created this restaurant meals program, and there's more details on this website, but it's too soon to tell how this is going to unravel. We'll have more details in the coming months about how this is going to roll out, but we're still waiting for USDA approval on that. So who needs to be included? And this is a big topic area because people live in crowded households, especially here where I am in New York City. You know, you've got older adult children living with their adult parents. So there's lots of people living in the same dwelling. And so SNAP rules are really important to understand in terms of how a household is categorized. So for SNAP, you can have a group of people who indicate that they purchase and prepare meals. So if I was living with a few roommates, we are not related to each other, but we decide we want to prepare meals together. We can be a household size of 2 or 3, depending on how many roommates I have. However, there are certain families that don't have that option. SNAP says, listen, wait a minute. If you live together, these individuals have to be considered a SNAP household, regardless of whether you purchase and prepare meals. And those households are spouses who live together. So if you're married, you live together, you have to be part of a SNAP household. It doesn't matter. My husband and I, there are moments when we don't purchase and prepare meals, and there are moments when we do. We don't have that choice. And SNAP says that we must be part of a SNAP household. Then you have this category, parents with children under the age of 22. So if you're a parent and you have children, they are living with you, they're 21 years of age, you must be one household. So parents and that child 21 years of age or older must be a SNAP household, which means that if you're 21 years old, you're living at home, you're going to school, you decide I want to apply for SNAP benefits, your parents get pulled in. So you can't have that case on your own. So that's just the rule. And then you have this category, children under the age of 18 under parental control. This is a child that is not your own child. Perhaps you are a caregiver. Maybe you're a grandparent caring for your grandchildren. Maybe you're the adult sibling caring for your younger siblings. If these siblings, if these nieces, nephews, grandchildren are under parental control, you must be a SNAP household for SNAP purposes up until the child is 18. There are also additional qualifying factors for SNAP. That's too much to get into. We have 2-hour webinars that we provide for social service professionals. We're not going to do that here. I've got like 15 minutes or less now. But there are other factors to consider. There's income, there's resources for certain households, there's immigration criteria that may apply. And so yes, if you are a non-citizen, you might be eligible for SNAP benefits. I wanted to address rules on resources. So for most SNAP households, resources are not a factor, with the exception of this population. So individuals who are age 60 and over or disabled, SNAP is going to check your income. And if you're a household size of 1 and your income is over $2,147, they're going to look at your resources. And so here on my slide, if they look at your resources and your resources is more than $3,750, you're not going to be eligible for SNAP. And resources are money in the bank, mutual funds, things like that. Those are what they would consider countable resources. There are resources that don't count. For example, a vehicle of any value doesn't count for SNAP purposes. So, but whatever countable resources are available, it may count toward those limits. So just keep in mind that they are going to look at your income to determine whether or not you have to prove resources. If your resources are under the limit, then it's fine. You don't have to worry about proving resources. So how much can I get in SNAP benefits? Well, the amount of SNAP benefits is really going to depend, and I get phone calls all the time. How much can I get? It really is based on a SNAP budget, and the calculations that they use depends on household size, depends on the monthly income. And remember, going back to household size, you have to identify who's going to be part of that SNAP unit. Everyone in that SNAP unit, they're going to look at their income. And so income is going to be a factor, as well as any allowable deductions. So SNAP has lots of deductions, and there are certain budgeting advantages for members who are age 60 and over or who are disabled. They can use, as we heard from AARP, all of these out-of-pocket medical expenses. So these expenses can actually be used as a deduction when you are going through the calculation to determine whether you can get SNAP benefits. One of the things that I like to show is our free New York State Benefits Plus SNAP calculator. Let me just quickly see if I can click on this. I just wanted to show you very quickly, it is a free tool to be able to go in there and make a determination of whether or not you might be eligible for SNAP benefits. It doesn't seem to be working. Oh, there it is. So this is our SNAP calculator. You don't need a username. You don't need a password for it. There are these little marks here so that you can find the definition of what is needed to be included in this. And so in the privacy of your own home, you can go through this. Make sure to look at these little, this little icon with the eye. I don't know if you see it on my screen, it's very small, but it'll tell you what information to include in there. And then you can get an estimate of how much SNAP benefits you might be eligible for. Remember that the calculator is only doing an income calculation. It's not looking at, resources. It's not looking at immigration criteria. It's just doing income. So if you're income eligible, it might give you the option to finally put in an application. So how do you apply? There's a paper application. There's actually an application that is designed for a statewide application designed for those who are 60 and over or disabled and who have no earned income. So it's the simplified application here, the LDSS 5166. There's a link to it. Here, you can also submit an application in person with a community-based organization or online through My Benefits. So My Benefits is an application portal. You can create a username and a password, just like anything else. Sign in, answer a lot of the questions that have to do with who's included in your household, your income information, etc., and submit an application online. Again, with a community-based organization, you can click on the link here and get patched up with a community-based organization who partners and can actually submit this application on your behalf. Okay, so that's SNAP benefits. I went back and forth trying to figure out whether I wanted to talk about PEBT. So this is called the New York State Pandemic Electronic Benefit Transfer. This is a program that is designed for children. And I decided ultimately to bring this up because there's a large population of grandparents raising grandchildren. And this might be something to kind of keep in the back of your mind. If you are caring for a child, again, it could be you're caring for your siblings, you're caring for your nieces, you're caring for your grandchildren, and they receive free school lunch through the National School Lunch Program, they might be eligible or have been eligible for PEBT. It has to be a participating school operating with reduced in-person attendance due to COVID-19. There is no income requirement, no immigration criteria, no application process. Basically, New York State will identify these households that are eligible and assign an EBT card if the household doesn't already have one, and puts benefits in there that behave just like SNAP benefits. And so that's a little bit of a confusion. Some people who have a PEBT card, it looks just like a regular EBT card. But PEBT, you need to understand they're not SNAP benefits. PEBT, you're getting this benefit because there's a child who is participating in the National School Lunch Program, and there's been reduced attendance due to COVID-19. And so there's more information here. And ultimately, the straw that broke the camel's back in terms of including this is that there is a potential of getting additional PEBT benefits for this current school year, 2021-2022. No additional information yet, but I really wanted people to hold on to your EBT card or your New York State Medicaid card or PEBT food card, just in case benefits are issued to the child in the future. So I thought it was worth mentioning. I wanted to mention is community supported agriculture. This is called the CSA program. It's a partnership between a community-based organization and a local farm. And basically what you are doing is you are purchasing a share of a farmer's crop. You're paying it upfront. So sometimes they'll have a season where they'll say you pay $500 and we will send you, or you can come pick up every week a whole box of food items. So it'll be once a week for 22 weeks, typically from June to late fall. But when I went on the website recently, I was able to find that there are some markets that are offering food boxes for a price during the winter months. So I would urge you to click on this. This is a great program. There's no immigration criteria, no income or resources to demonstrate in order to participate in this program. I would always call to confirm the address, the date, and the time that the market is open, and confirm that the market has the produce that you're looking for. And so that's pretty much it for me. I wanted to introduce those programs. Here are some local resources. Finding a regional food bank in your region for seniors is a great site for the different types of farmers market. I always go to this site whenever I travel so that I can buy from local farmers in upstate New York. I urge you to stay connected with us on social media. This has been like the way of the future in terms of communicating what we have, upcoming information that we have available. So we've been using this more than we have in the past because of COVID and everybody working from home and individuals doing everything online. This is our team, Michelle Bernay, Yvonne Pena. They Michelle does health programs, Yvonne does housing. We have a public benefit information line that's open to the general public. If people want to talk to one of our volunteer counselors about anything that I've mentioned here, they can answer questions, whether you live here in New York State or live in another state, that's fine too. We can help answer and direct any questions anyone has.
Thank you so much, Leslie. And but you have the slides there, and I hope that you can send those to us in case anybody wants to call our office, and then
Yes, I
we'll send
emailed
them
it
out.
to Jennifer. Yeah.
Right. Oh, okay. She has them. Okay. All right. So we can send those out to people because there's a lot of information. Now we're going to turn to David Kuttner. And David is a founding partner of Lamson and Kuttner, a preeminent elder law firm with offices in Westchester and New York City. And I know Jen Tewell on my staff met him, and that's why he's on our program today. He focuses in on advising seniors and their families on healthcare and estate planning with an approach that emphasizes the protection of assets against the high risk and high costs associated with long-term care. And David will share his expertise today on wills, estates, and long-term care, all issues that older people have to think about, but also younger people have to think about also. Welcome, David.
Thank you, Sandy. Thank you very much for inviting me to speak today. You've given me a tall order here to cover wills, trusts, and long-term care in 15 minutes, but we'll give it our best. Let me just share my screen with everyone, if I could do that. And hopefully we can see my screen there. So let's jump right into it. I like to say this to clients: wills and trusts are great, but will you have an estate? And I'll get to that. But let me start with wills, because I think there are some misconceptions about what wills are and how they work. Probably everybody knows that it's a document that expresses your wishes regarding what you want to have happen to your estate when you die. But I want to emphasize that your estate, for this purpose, the estate that's covered by your will, is only those assets that remain in your name when you die. So if you have, for example, jointly owned property, a joint bank account, maybe you own a house that's in joint tenancy with your spouse, those documents, those accounts will take precedence over the will, and those assets will pass directly to the survivor. So it won't matter what you say in your will about your house or your bank account or your investment account if there's a surviving owner on the account or if there's a named beneficiary on the account. They're not probate assets. The other thing that I think is useful to know about wills is that every single will, every one of them, it's just a piece of paper until a judge, the judge in the surrogate's court, rules that that's your last will and testament and issues an order to your executor to proceed and administer the estate. So wills inevitably involve a court proceeding called probate. You've probably all heard that word. It can be expensive, it can take time, it can be frustrating. I know that from the clients that we've had that have gone through probate proceedings. It's often not any fun. There are ways to avoid that by putting property in joint name, naming beneficiaries, and by creating a trust, which is another way of proceeding with your estate. So what I say about trust is the best way to think about a trust is think of it as another person. Legally, it's another person. If I have the David Kuttner Trust, that's another person. It's not David Kuttner. Nobody owns that trust, right? It's a person unto itself. It will be governed by a trust agreement, and it will be managed by a trustee. Now, if I'm creating an estate planning trust, I can be my own trustee. I can manage all my assets for the rest of my life. I'll name a successor trustee who will manage the trust after I pass on. The nice thing about this kind of trust is there's no probate, there's no court proceeding. Everything is handled privately and much more efficiently than you would have in a probate proceeding. And those are the main reasons, I think, why many people like the idea of a trust to hold assets and pass them on in that efficient kind of way. There are many kinds of trusts, and I could go on for half a day talking about trust, but we don't have time to do that. So let me get to the question that I'm asking here is, will you have an estate? And it's funny that many clients that I see really haven't thought about that issue and thought about the risks to their money and property that exist. And here's the main one, I think, for most people, unless you're very, very wealthy. And that is the risk of needing long-term care. And these statistics that I put here on this slide, I didn't make them up. They come from the US Department of Health. And they say that 7 out of 10 people over the age of 65 will need some kind of long-term care at some point in their lives. And about 4 out of 10 will need nursing home care. And if you know anything about the cost of these services, and particularly in the greater New York metropolitan area, it really is just shocking. And it's the kind of expense that really can deplete your assets and leave you with very little or nothing. So I like to discuss this with really all of our clients. Do you have a plan? Have you thought about it? I think that a very good plan to deal with long-term care can be integrated and should be integrated with your estate plan. So let's take a look at who pays for long-term care, and that will maybe lead us into how we can deal with this important issue. Private pay, that's your own money, which you'd rather not do and probably can't afford. And just to put some numbers on it, if you need nursing home care in this area, you could easily spend $15,000 to $20,000 a month. Assisted living, you could pay, I don't know, $8,000, $10,000, $12,000, $15,000 a month. And home care, maybe you'll spend $30 an hour and up. Multiply that by the number of hours a day and the number of days in the month, and it's a lot of money. I saw a client last week who was spending $25,000 a month on home care. It can be, as I said, devastating financially. Long-term care insurance is one option. It's not always a good option. It's maybe for some people. What I would say about it, and I don't sell insurance, but I think if you're looking at long-term care insurance, you want to make sure that it really is going to protect your assets. We see clients that bought a policy, it has $100 a day benefit or $150 a day benefit. So my question would be to that person, what if the expense is $500 a day and you have $100 a day benefit? Where's the other, $400 or $350 a day coming from? Well, if your answer is, I have very good income, I've got a lot of Social Security, pension, distributions from retirement plans, and so on, I can afford to pay that difference. Well, okay, that's a good answer, because then the insurance helps protect your assets. But if your answer is, gee, I don't know, I guess I'll have to take it out of savings, that's not a very good answer. It just means that the insurance is going to slow the rate of depletion of your assets, but you're still likely to deplete your assets. So it's worth really giving some thought to it before you buy a policy. Then Medicaid, which I'm going to talk a little bit more about. And I want to be clear that it's not Medicare. A lot of people seem to think that maybe Medicare is going to deal with this problem. They say, well, I know somebody who spent some time in a nursing home and it was covered by Medicare. Well, that might be the case if that person was in the nursing home for rehabilitation, which is covered by Medicare, but that's only up to 100 days. It's not long term. So it's not Medicare, it's not medical insurance, it's not health insurance. The only kind of insurance that's relevant to this question is long-term care insurance. So let me talk about Medicaid because it's the source of payment for really a fairly significant percentage of our population in New York. And I think we have the best Medicaid program in the country. And I say that maybe I ought to start with the idea that Medicaid is a kind of a partnership between the federal government and the state government. So you have federal law, state and federal money, and then state law and state money. But the program is administered by the states, really under state law and at the county level. So what the state does and what it puts into its program, both its laws and the amount of money it puts in, is really significant. And New York spends something like 25 times more per capita than many states in this country. And that's just to give you an idea of the differences that may exist. And, you know, in our elder law section at the New York Bar, sometimes we have meetings with attorneys from other states. And sometimes it's just shocking to me how little is offered compared to what we have in New York. And by the way, one other thought about. Call from Chesterland. Sorry, I don't know where that's coming from. One other thought about Medicaid is clients ask me, you know, gee, is this program going to continue? Can we afford it? And one of the things that I think about Medicaid and other programs is it's not just about caring for seniors and people who need care. This is a very important economic and job creation engine for New York State, both in the healthcare industry, but think about all the other industries that support healthcare, construction and furniture and linens and food and medical equipment, and it just goes on and on. It's a really powerful economic engine for our state. So getting to Medicaid eligibility, a lot of people think, well, gee, I have too much income to qualify for Medicaid. Not true. Medicaid eligibility is based on what Medicaid calls resources. Resources being certain categories of your assets, mainly your financial assets and real estate. So nobody's going to look in your jewelry box or your stamp collection or your car, and all of this sort of tangible personal property is really not looked at. It's, you know, what's in your bank account, what do you own in the way of securities, you know, do you have your home will be looked at, second homes, timeshares, and so on. One thing I ought to mention, though, is retirement accounts are not resources as long as the person is taking at least the required minimum distribution. So retirement accounts in payout status are not Medicaid resources. So in most cases, we can put aside the IRA, the 401k, the 403b. Those are not Medicaid resources, again, as long as the person is taking at least the required minimum distribution. So adding up all these resources, we want to be under $15,900. That's the eligibility level this year. It tends to change every year, but not by much. Next year, it may be a few $100s more, but probably not more than that, if at all. Income, as I say on this slide, is not a factor in determining eligibility, but it does come into play with Medicaid. Currently, if you are benefiting from community Medicaid being really all the programs other than nursing home. So community Medicaid includes care in the home, assisted living, adult daycare, and many other programs as well. There, your income is limited to $904 a month. However, if you have what Medicaid calls surplus income, that would be the amount above the income limit, you can either contribute the surplus to the cost of your care, or you can open an account with a pooled income trust. So I really don't have time to go into all the details about pooled income trust, but certainly you can read about it on the internet or on our website. It's essentially another bank account for you that comes with certain restrictions. The main ones being that you can only spend the money on yourself, and if you pass on or move into a nursing home, if there's any balance left in the trust account, it will stay with the trust. And all of these trusts are organized for charitable purposes. If you're in a nursing home and you're receiving Medicaid benefits, then your income, all of it, is going to go to the nursing home, except $50 a month, which you will keep in a personal needs account to pay for a haircut or an article of clothing or something of that nature. So basically, your income goes to the nursing home. However, if you have a spouse at home who's living in the community, we would take a look at the spouse's income, and if he or she has only a small amount, then some of the income of the spouse who's in the nursing home may be given to or attributed to the spouse who's living in the community, called the community spouse. So let me move on here to a very important concept for Medicaid called the look back. So when you apply for Medicaid, currently in the community program, the question that will be asked on the application is, what are your resources? And there is no question about what have you done with your resources previously to the time that you filed your application. So currently, that provides an opportunity to move assets out of your name and then become eligible for Medicaid if you've left yourself with less than $15,900. However, the New York State Legislature last year enacted a new look back of 2.5 years. And originally that was supposed to go into effect some time ago, but due to the federal public health emergency from the coronavirus, the date of implementation keeps being pushed back. So the current implementation date is April 1st of 2022. It may get pushed back again if the public health emergency continues, which restricts states, all of the states, from making their Medicaid programs more restrictive. But currently we're dealing with this April 1st date, which means that a Medicaid application filed on or after April 1st of next year will have to disclose assets that have been transferred. And if an applicant has transferred assets, that transfer will cause a period of ineligibility. And the period of ineligibility is based on the amount or value of the assets transferred. So the more money that's been transferred, the longer the period of ineligibility. So this concept of a look back is one that's been around for a long time in the nursing home area. Years ago, it was a 3-year look back. That would be, I guess, pre-2006. So we've been dealing with this 5-year look back for a long time. It means that when you apply for nursing home benefits, that means you're in a nursing home, you have less than $15,900 to your name. You also must disclose in your application all of your financial information going back 5 years. That means 60 monthly statements for every bank account and investment account that was open during that 5-year period. And if transfers of assets have been made, whether of money, securities, real property, co-ops, whatever it was, that's going to cause a period of ineligibility. The calculation of that ineligibility period is easy to do. Medicaid publishes something called the regional rates every year at the beginning of the year, and those are the numbers that are used to calculate the period of ineligibility. They're currently all, and this is again by county, they're all roughly around $13,000. So as an example, if you transferred $130,000 within the look back period, you would divide that by 13,000, and it would tell you that you're going to be ineligible for 10 months. So let me move on here. Being in the practice of elder law, one of our principal tasks for clients, and this is what most attorneys who have what we call an elder law practice are looking to do, is to help clients become eligible for Medicaid. And that will take a look at various strategies that may or may not be available in a given case. And it's really hard for me within the time period I have to go into this in any detail at all. But the first thing we would look at would be possible exempt transfers. So a transfer to a spouse does not cause a penalty. A transfer to a disabled child, a transfer to a disabled person, or a trust for the sole benefit of that person would be an exempt transfer. Anyway, there are a number of these possibilities that would be looked at in an individual case. Oftentimes, there is no possibility of an exempt transfer, and then we'll look to other possibilities. Right now, again, in the community setting, we can move money to other family members, children or siblings or others, or we can think about setting up a different kind of trust than the estate planning trust I spoke about earlier. And that would be an irrevocable trust, one where you could not be the trustee of your own trust. And it would be the type of trust where, having transferred your assets to the trust, you no longer have any control over the trust or any access to the principal amounts in the trust. And that would be the key to creating a trust that facilitates Medicaid eligibility, because legally and properly you can say that the money and property held in that trust is not yours. It belongs to another person, the trust. That being said, this type of trust can give you the right to live in your own home for the rest of your life, even though you don't own it. You can have the right to receive the income from investments, and your trustee can be children, siblings, close friends. You get to choose. Anyway, there's a lot to talk about with this type of trust. It is used very frequently in the Medicaid context. It facilitates eligibility. It protects your assets. It avoids probate. A lot of good things to say about it. No real disadvantages. So let me go a little bit further here, and I don't know how I'm doing on time, but I guess my final thoughts are that those who plan in advance in this area are going to probably come out a little bit better than those who are start addressing these issues and when a crisis occurs, which seems to happen a lot. Mom or dad slips and falls, breaks a hip, winds up in the hospital and rehab. They're ready to come home, but they really can't be alone anymore. They need an aide to assist them. Well, there's a lot we can do. It's not too late to plan, but it would have been better if we thought about this in advance. So there are lots of different strategies that we use in elder law practice. There's no one size fits all. I think a consultation would be useful with our firm, or really any firm that practices in this area. It would put you in a better position to make an informed decision about your future and your estate. Be aware that if you do decide to apply for Medicaid, it's not a simple matter. It's a complex project involving a lot of diligence and documentation and so on. I think it can often be very cost effective for you. So anyway, I'll look forward to any questions during the Q&A period. And again, that's my firm in New York City and in Harrison, New York. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much, David. I know it's really hard for all the speakers to try to maintain 15 minutes when they're very complicated issues, but I thank you so very, very much. And now we're going to turn to Roberta Goodman, who is a senior staff attorney in the Elder Justice Unit with the Pace Women's Justice Center. And she represents, educates advocates on behalf of elder abuse victims of financial exploitation, and advocates for other domestic disputes, voluntary guardianships, and more. She's a member of the Westchester County Elder Abuse Multidisciplinary Team and Westchester Mental Health Geriatric Care Collaborative. And we do get a lot of calls with people that are dealing with the issues of elder abuse or financial elder abuse or whatever. So I welcome Roberta. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you so much for inviting the center to be participating in this terrific forum. And I have to tell you that I went to your website and I was so impressed with the listing of senior services that your office has delineated. And I just think it's a tremendous tool for anyone in the state to access. So thank you for everything that you do and for what your office does. So how does the Pace Women's Justice Center support older adults? We are a free civil legal services center. And as Assemblyperson Galef said, we represent and advocate for individuals who are 60 and older, men and women, despite our name. And these individuals live in Westchester and Putnam counties, and they've experienced some form of abuse. So abuse can involve financial exploitation, can be emotional, physical, sexual, and can involve self-neglect. It's often a complicated matter, and it's riddled with self-doubt by the victim. So we find it extremely beneficial to collaborate with the various social service agencies that are in the counties to supplement our services and to provide holistic support to people who have experienced a form of abuse. We have a variety of units within our center that address different needs. The first access might be our helpline. Our helpline, it's not a hotline, but it's a helpline. And it's staffed by volunteer attorneys Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. The helpline is typically answered live, but if someone is on the line, then a message can be left. We ask that the person who's calling leave a safe phone number for us to return the phone call, because oftentimes victims of abuse are in a compromised situation and they don't want someone leaving a message saying this is a law firm or a legal services center returning your call. So at this, with this telephone number, and I will provide all the numbers in the chat when I'm done, what we do is we provide information and referral on a variety of matters. It doesn't necessarily have to deal with elder issues. And we give information to the callers, and if the matter is appropriate to be referred in-house to one of the attorneys or one of the units at the Women's Justice Center, then that referral is made. Another point of contact at the Women's Justice Center is our walk-in clinic, which has become virtual since the pandemic has affected all of us. The walk-in clinic provides a 1-hour free consultation with an attorney who can provide legal advice. And the services are available to either survivors or victims of domestic violence, elder abuse, or sexual assault. There is no income cap, no income requirement. We have no age minimum for anyone who wants to contact the walk-in clinic. And sometimes the walk-in clinic will actually have a virtual representation in family court to assist the individual with getting a temporary order of protection. My unit, which is the Elder Justice Unit, assists, as I mentioned, individuals who are 60 or older with consumer issues. Could be a credit card, could be a loan, could be a utility dispute, abusive housing situations, and the preparation of advanced health directives, or under appropriate circumstances, perhaps revoking a power of attorney that was misused, and that is provided that the individual who is seeking our services still has the capacity to revoke this power of attorney. We will also guide them if they've been a victim of identity theft, or if their credit card has been used inappropriately by a family member. We'll help them make a report to a credit agency to put a freeze on their credit. So we may not be able to assist them with recovering any money that has been taken, but we can stop any more money from leaving their accounts by instructing them on how to go forward with protecting themselves. Sometimes we're faced with clients who come to us with inappropriate deed transfers. They didn't realize what they were signing. And so we will reach out to see if we can have a correction done. If there's criminal activity involved, we might refer the matter to the district attorney's office. By sitting on the multidisciplinary elder abuse team, we have gained the benefit of sitting at a table used to be located in the Adult Protective Services offices. Now we meet virtually once a month, and we're able to discuss and entertain very complex abusive issues and try to figure out with the professionals who sit at the table how to resolve it. Gary Brown is a member of this organization, Adult Protective Services, the District Attorney's Office, APS caseworkers, and other Department of Community Mental Health. So you've really got this brain trust to try and assist people in the community. Sometimes even the building departments from the various towns come to us with issues and on how to help members of their communities. In addition to the Elder Justice Unit, we have a program known as Be Prepared. Be Prepared is designed to help lower income individuals who do not have significant assets. They don't have property out of state, create a financial power of attorney, an advanced health directive, and a will. And this program is also staffed by volunteer attorneys. PACE has, I believe, 22 paid staff members, but we have hundreds of volunteers. And we are so blessed to have so many people who are passionate about our mission. One of the other units that we have is our family court legal program. These are attorneys that are stationed in the family courts in Yonkers, in White Plains, and now that we have a New Rochelle building, a new family court in New Rochelle, they are able to go into New Rochelle, and it's a walk-in basis. An individual can walk into the family court. Unfortunately, now it's still virtual, and ask for assistance with swearing out a petition where a family offense has occurred. They get representation to go before the sitting judge or the referee and ask for an order of protection that might include an order having the abuser refrain from the bad behavior or to stay away from the individual, depending upon the offenses that may have been committed. It's a terrific program because it's ex parte, so you don't have to worry at the initial stages of the abuser being aware that you're doing this or being in the building where you are seeking to have court protection. Another program that we have is our family law unit. And this program does not have an age limit. And we provide free representation for lower income individuals who are victims of domestic violence. We assist them with securing divorces and with securing support. For those who have income that is above $80,000, we have a moderate means program, which is staffed by private attorneys who have agreed to accept a significantly reduced fee to provide legal services for those people who are in need of a divorce or who need support from a spouse. I am happy to entertain questions when Gary Brown finishes his presentation. I know we're short on time, but thank you again for allowing us to participate. And I will put our contact information in the chat, and we are available for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Roberta. And I actually got some I'm taking notes on all this stuff, by the way, because I got some really good information. And I think about some constituents that emailed me recently about some of these issues. So we will get your information out to them. Now we have Gary Brown, who we've talked about a couple of times, Gary, just so you know. I think Gary has probably been on at my senior forums more than anybody else, because we think he's so good at telling us about all the scams, the newest scams that we have to protect ourselves from.
Yeah.
And Gary is statewide elder abuse coordinator for New York State Attorney General Letitia James, and he's Assistant Attorney General in charge of the Attorney General's, this is so complicated, Westchester Regional Office, and he's co-chair of the Westchester Elder Abuse Coalition, which we've just been hearing about. So, Gary, can you tell us about the newest problems we are facing, along with some that keep coming back all the time, I guess?
Hi, Sandy. I sure will. And thank you so much for the invitation. It's good to see you, albeit virtually. But before I get into the scams, I just want to talk about two of the more common consumer complaints that we're getting during the pandemic. The number one complaint has been about online shopping, right? We're all doing so much online shopping nowadays. But the problem is sometimes people are ordering merchandise that never arrives. And there's been a particular problem in that area with people trying to buy or adopt pets online. And they pay in advance and then the pet never arrives. So the classic online shopping tips apply now really more than ever. You want to use reputable sites that you've heard of, that you've dealt with before. You want to make sure it's a secure website, and you always want to pay by credit card when shopping online. Because think about it this way, if you go online today and you buy something, you're not going to have to pay the bill for that credit card charge until the end of next month or the end of this month. If you pay by debit card, the money is withdrawn from your account immediately. And if ultimately it turns out the product doesn't arrive, you're in the much worse position of trying to get your money back than of disputing a bill before you ever had to pay it. And even if you did pay the credit card bill in full before the product arrived, our experience has been that it's much easier to get a charge back from a credit card company than an actual cash refund when using a debit card. So think of it that way. The other complaint we've gotten a lot of during the pandemic is from people who got a letter from the State Department of Labor about the unemployment insurance claim that they had never filed in their own name. Someone else had filed for unemployment in that person's name. The good news is that in very, very few of these cases are the false payments being made out. But the bad news is that if you get a letter like that from the Department of Labor, it means someone tried to file unemployment in your name, and they have your name, your address, and your social security number. So you've got to notify the Department of Labor, you've got to notify your employer if you're working, and you've also got to go into identity theft prevention overdrive. The Federal Trade Commission has a great website called identitytheft.gov, identity theft as one word.gov, that has step-by-step instructions on what you should do if that happens to you. But now I'm going to move quickly along to the classic scams, Sandy, some of the ones we've seen before and some new twists on them. If there's one misconception that I think people have about scams, it's that they think the scammers are trying to outsmart us. They're trying to trick us. But what they're really more often trying to do is to push our emotional buttons, to get us to feel greed, love, fear, generosity, loneliness, any emotion of that type, and then take advantage of that to try to rip us off. And I think the best example that I can give you of the fact that it's not about intelligence is just to briefly mention the biggest con artist in the history of the United States. He stole $60 billion using a Ponzi scheme. And I'm talking, of course, about Bernie Madoff. Bernie Madoff did not steal money from stupid people. He stole money from some of the smartest and most sophisticated individual and institutional investors in the United States of America. But he appealed to the greed factor. He offered fantastically high guaranteed returns that you couldn't get anywhere else. And so people fell for it. So it's not really about intelligence, it's about emotions. Seniors are often targeted for these scams because they're home more likely, and they have underlying conditions sometimes that make them more vulnerable to falling for COVID-related scams, as I'll briefly touch on. But the most common phone scam that we've seen in the history of the United States was the so-called IRS scam. The caller says he's an IRS agent, you owe back taxes, and if you don't go out and buy some gift cards and call us back with a serial number, we're going to come and arrest you today. Now, when you think about it, there are elements of that call that don't make sense. For starters, the IRS doesn't call you on the phone. They communicate in writing. Second of all, they don't threaten to arrest you the same day. And third of all, they don't tell you to pay your taxes by buying gift cards and calling back with the serial numbers. You write them a check. But if you don't know that this call is a scam, the emotion you're going to feel when you pick up that call is fear of the IRS, fear of being arrested. And so it was estimated that about 1 in 50 people who were getting this call were falling for it and sending the money. This shift that we've seen, though, in the last couple of years is that instead of the imposter caller pretending to be an IRS agent, he now more often claims to be calling from the Social Security Administration. And he says, there's a problem with your account, and we need to confirm that you're the person we're trying to reach, so please read me your Social Security number. If you give that information out over the phone, it will then be used to commit identity theft against you. And sometimes in that call, they also say that there's a fee or a fine that you owe, and they want you to go buy gift cards. We're getting a lot of complaints from people who are getting a call from Becky from Medicare. It's not really Becky for Medicare, it's an imposter. And what she says is that you qualify for a free genetic cancer screening test, that you've got to take it very quickly or you're going to lose your eligibility. And then they ask for your Medicare number and your Social Security number and other personal information over the phone. The scam that gets me the angriest, because the emotion it uses to rip people off is love, is the so-called grandparent scam, where the caller says he's your grandson, he's been arrested in a foreign country or something like that, and he needs grandma to send bail money immediately. Oftentimes the caller doesn't even know the name of the grandchild he's impersonating. He starts out and says, "Hi, grandma, it's your favorite grandson," hoping grandma will respond with a name. He has a reason why he doesn't sound like himself, because it's an imposter. They haven't given me anything to eat or drink in a couple of days. And he'll say, "Grandma, please don't tell my parents this happened to me, because if they find out, they're going to kill me." So they're isolating the victim for two reasons. One is to make sure she doesn't speak to her adult children, because they'll tell her it's a scam. And the other reason is the old saying, flattery will get you everywhere. Essentially, the fake grandson is saying to grandma, "Grandma, I trust you with this deep, dark secret of my arrest more than I trust my own parents." And so it's a very effective scam, and people are very reluctant to admit that they have fallen for it. The twist we're seeing during the pandemic, though, is that more often now, instead of the caller pretending to be the grandson, the caller claims to be a court official or a bail bondsman or somebody like that, calling about the grandson who's been arrested and asking for bail money. And now often also, instead of telling grandma to go to the store and buying gift cards and calling back with a serial number, they're arranging for a courier to go to the victim's home and to pick up the cash. We think the reason they're doing that is because during the height of the pandemic, at least, many older adults were reluctant to go to a store and buy gift cards, but they probably had some cash on hand, or they'd be willing to go to an ATM to make a withdrawal to bail out their beloved grandson. There's a scam that's become more common during the pandemic called the utility scam. The caller says he's calling from your local utility, you're behind on your electric bill, and if you don't go out and buy gift cards and call back with a serial number today, we're going to shut off your electricity. And I learned from my own experience how compelling this call can be. My mother passed away in January of 2020, right before the pandemic started. But a couple of years earlier, she was living in Manhattan. My son, her grandson, was living with her. And one day my cell phone rang and my mother sounded more hysterical than I've ever heard her sound in my entire life. She was screaming into the phone that Con Ed had called, that she owed $800, that she had to go buy gift cards and call them back. And I tried commenting. She was on her way to the Duane Reade around the corner from where she lives when she called me. And I tried saying to her, "Mom, it's a scam. You've heard me talk about it." And she screamed back, "No, it's not a scam. They gave me a callback number. I called them back. They confirmed I owed the money." Finally, after about 10 or 15 minutes, I was able to convince my mother it was a scam. She turned around and she started walking home. And at that point, I reminded her that my son, her grandson, who was living with her, was paying the Con Ed bill online every month, and it was in his name. She didn't even pay the bill anymore. And when I pointed that out to her, she said, "Oh my God, Gary, I feel so stupid." But I said, "Mom, it's not about stupidity. It's about emotions. They scared you into thinking you were going to lose your electricity on a hot day in August. That's how con artists work." There's a scam we've seen become more common during the pandemic because of social isolation and loneliness, and that's the so-called romance scam. More and more older adults are going online to try to meet somebody, and there are predators out there lying in wait with fake profiles. And when they see someone new has posted their own profile, they reach out to that person. They start initiating some lovey-dovey talk and email and text messaging. There's always a reason why they can't come visit in person, and the pandemic has made that an easier excuse to come up with. And then after a period of grooming for usually a couple of months comes the ask for money. And the sad thing about the romance scam is that oftentimes the victims, even after being told that they're being ripped off, will continue to send the money because they just don't want to believe that this new source of love and compassion in their life who's helping to ease their loneliness is really a con artist. And I know families who have had to resort to self-help do things like change the phone number, check the mail going in and out of the house, things like that, to make sure that the older victim doesn't continue sending the money. So what are some of the things that you can do to avoid becoming a victim? Well, you heard me mention several times that the scammers nowadays are asking for payment by gift card. As soon as you hear someone say they need to be paid by gift card, it's a scam. The Federal Trade Commission, in fact, has made it illegal for companies to seek payment by gift card. Gift cards are used to make gifts, not to pay debt. So if someone asks you to pay by gift card, hang up on it. But even better yet, we encourage you, think of the phone as a one-way street. You only give information out over the phone if you made the call to a number that you know to be your bank, your credit card company, etc. If someone calls you, you really cannot be sure they are who they say they are. And what they do to make it seem more believable is they use caller ID spoofing. So if the caller is claiming to be an IRS agent, they'll make the IRS phone number appear on your caller ID. If the caller is claiming it's your grandson arrested in Montreal, Canada, they'll make a Montreal number appear. So you can't trust caller ID at all. Hang up the phone. And if it's, for example, your credit card, the caller says it's American Express and there are unauthorized charges in your account, hang up the phone, get out your credit card, look up the phone number and call American Express back so you can be sure that you're talking to the real thing. But even more importantly, we urge you not to answer the phone at all if you simply don't recognize the number. Let it ring through to voicemail. If it's a real caller, they'll leave a message you can call back. If it's a scammer, they probably won't leave a message, but if they do, you can simply delete it. It keeps you off the phone. You can't get ripped off that way. And sometimes people say to me, Gary, I like when I see a call that I don't recognize. I answer the phone, I waste 5 or 10 minutes of their time, and then I go, ha ha, and hang up. We strongly discourage you from doing that for 2 reasons. One is you just wasted 5 or 10 minutes of your own time. But more importantly, the computers that generate these calls can tell if a live voice answers the phone, no matter what you say. And if you do answer the phone, the program is designed to keep calling your number. Point being, the more times you answer these calls, the more of them you're going to get. And the fewer you answer, the fewer you're going to get. So try not to answer. As more and more of us are not answering the phone unless we recognize the number, they're trying to trick us by using a technique called neighbor spoofing. They spoof a number in your area code and often in your exchange, hoping you'll think it's a neighbor, it's a local business, it's someone I know, and you'll answer the phone on that basis. Don't fall for it. Don't answer the phone unless you recognize the whole number. You're now seeing a lot of warnings on your cell phone, right? It says potential spam when you get a call. What they're warning you in essence is that the call that you're getting was using caller ID spoofing. The number that originated the call was not the same number that would have appeared on caller ID. So you don't want to answer those calls. Unfortunately, though, not all of the carriers in the United States have yet implemented the technology to make that effective. And so there hasn't been any kind of noticeable drop down yet. But eventually, as that becomes more widespread, we're hoping that it will work. Last thing I just want to quickly touch on is the do not call registry. People say to me frequently, Gary, I'm on the registry, but I keep getting all these scam calls, so is it worth it? And the answer is yes and no. Yes, because legitimate American-based companies will stop calling you once you sign up for the do not call registry. But unfortunately, the scammers calling from anywhere in the world will not stop calling because they know they're not going to get caught. They're using caller ID spoofing anyway. So it's worth having, but it's not a foolproof solution. So Sandy, I know it's afternoon now and I don't want to go on too long, so I think I'll wrap it up there. I posted in the chat the AG's web address and our toll-free telephone number.
Thank you so much, Gary. I'm sorry, we have wonderful speakers and a lot of information, and it's really been great. And you know, you started out, Gary, with I did online shopping to get some preventative pandemic stuff. And yes, you're right, it never came, but I had it on my credit card. So I was able to call the company and say it never arrived. It probably was coming from another country and it was a scam.
Good.
So yeah, I learned my lesson. I think we all, unfortunately, learn things that we shouldn't do. Somebody mentioned there was a question about Social Security scams. I don't know whether you mentioned that, Gary, or not.
Yeah, the IRS scam, the Internal Revenue Service scam, has kind of evolved into the Social Security scam because I think so many people had heard about the IRS call. It wasn't working anymore. So now more often the caller claims to be with Social Security, says there's some kind of problem with your account, and asks you to provide your Social Security number over the phone to confirm you're the person they're trying to reach.
So just don't do that.
No.
Do we have any questions? Just if you want to raise your hand in the chat or raise your hand. Claire McGarry has a question.
Just a quick question. Gee, I really appreciated everything you said. Is there a New York State Police Association?
Well, I don't know. You know, your question is it a legitimate organization that you might want to donate to? And I don't know that name off the top of my head, but
So they call me.
Yeah. First of
New
all,
York State Police Association.
You should never respond to a charitable solicitation made over the phone for 2 reasons.
No,
One is you don't
I
know if it's a real charity or not, but even if it is, the telemarketer, the fundraiser who's calling you is going to keep on average 1/3 of your donation. So you're much better off donating directly to the
I
charity.
just wonder if you ever heard of them.
I haven't heard of that particular
Okay.
group.
Right.
Thank you.
Claire, I get those also, and I just tell them to send me something in the mail, and I never get anything from them.
Yes,
So
I've tried that. Yeah, thank you.
it's one approach.
And Claire, one other thing I just want to mention, you had asked earlier about going on the unclaimed funds website and do you have to input your social security number? And the answer to that is no. But there is a website where you do need to input your number. If you want to get your free credit report at annualcreditreport.com, which is the website where you can get free credit reports, you do have to enter your name and your social security number in order to get a free credit report.
Okay, thank you.
Gary, on that line, is it better to go and do it through a bank with a credit? I mean, I still think that there's a concern about who's at the other end of those questions about, you know, your financial stability and so on.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to answer the phone and give information out over the phone, that's for sure. So if you do want to engage in that kind of a transaction, best to do it in person. But for credit reports, the easiest way to do it is to go to annualcreditreport.com. You can order from all three of the credit reporting agencies. And because of the pandemic, they're offering them for free every week if you need to check your credit report.
Okay. And Ola has her hand raised. Ola?
Yeah, so I'm the one who posted about the Social Security scams. I've gotten so many calls, you know, and I know that Social Security never calls you. My son's an accountant, and IRS never calls you. But it's amazing. Like it's almost, and it's they call from different numbers, and sometimes if I don't answer my phone or whatever, it goes into voicemail. And I tried to get into Social Security myself to call them, and that's a challenge by itself to give them these numbers. And so some of them I've saved, and I haven't like had time to actually try to call Social Security directly to give them the numbers because they're saying, please call us and do that. But that's like that's difficult because
the problem is that the number that you would report to them is in all likelihood not even the real number that called you, because caller ID spoofing was used. And even if it was, they change these numbers, you know, on a very frequent basis. So unfortunately, the best advice I can give you is don't answer those calls, and hopefully they'll stop calling you as frequently.
Yeah, no, I never answer those phone calls because, you know, I've learned. I mean, once I did, and then that's it. So anytime these types of numbers, but the numbers don't come in as they don't come in as potential spam. Like certain numbers come in as potential spam, so you don't answer them, but these numbers don't. So,
yeah, the reason they don't is because not all of the phone carriers in the United States have implemented the technology that can warn you about caller ID spoofing. They're all required to do so, though, by the middle of 2023, the year after next. The bigger ones have already done it, but there are smaller carriers that haven't, and those are the ones that the scammers are routing their calls through.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. It's good to know. I'll delete all those numbers, and I'm not going to bother calling Social Security
Yeah,
and
just
reporting
delete
them.
them. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, Roberta Goodman has her hand up.
I just want to add to this that I too am getting multiple telephone calls, but I also get text messages.
Yeah.
So what I suggest that everyone does is you want to delete it without opening it. And then you want to make sure that you, depending upon your phone device, and this is on a mobile phone, you want to block the caller or you want to block the text. Because they will come back with another number, but at least this one will not get inadvertently opened. And I've gotten it from banks, and I've gotten it from banks that I have money in and banks that I don't have money in, as well as from Social Security and other attempts to separate me from my money and my identity. So we have
Thanks,
to.
Roberta. That's a really great point.
vigilant.
The volume of scam and spam texts is way up. And so it's rivaling the number of spam phone calls that are now being made.
I have a question for Pete Granis. I don't know whether this is something that you can respond to, but you know, we're talking about pension systems. You know, a number of the speakers have spoken about that. And we did adopt the Secure Choice Savings Program for people that are not, you know, in state government or whatever, that have pensions, or a company that has pensions that they can, you know, set up their own pension system. Is that going to be something that's going to be worked through the Office of the Comptroller?
I can't give you an answer, Sandy. And you know, generally when these, maybe the new administration will be more collaborative in working with us on how decisions are made like that. Normally we have found out either after the fact or that we're not involved, but we're hoping the new better relationships with this new executive team
Right.
will put us in the position, because these are things that we're very capable of handling and do so in the college savings program and the ABLE program and other programs where we manage, huge resources very effectively. So we'll have to find out how this plays out. I
Right.
just don't know the
We
answer.
have that. Because I know David Kuttner, talked about, planning for the future and so on. Obviously, having a pension plan, it can be very, very, very helpful to people. So, well, we'll see where we go on that. Any questions? We've gone over, I know. We've had so many wonderful speakers. All right, so I'm going to thank everybody. I'm going to thank Pete Granis, Beth Finkel, Leslie Bailey, David Kuttner, Roberta Goodman, Gary Brown. I can't believe we got so many people into this program for a little over 2 hours. And I want to thank everybody, my constituents and others that have participated. We will try to get a lot of information out with our next e-blast. And but if you're on the phone and you need information, you may want to contact us at the office so we can send something in the mail to you or your email. So, all right, I thank you all very, very much. Have a good rest of the week, and may the holidays be ahead be very enjoyable for everybody. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Sandy.
you.
Wonderful
Thank you.
program. Thank you.
Thank you so much.